Under the cold glare of the Galactic Council's chamber, silence held like iron. The woman stood tall in chains, her uniform torn, her medals still clinging defiantly to her chest. The Empire's High Adjudicator read charges that echoed across the dome: sedition, treason, and aiding enemies of the Empire. She didn't flinch. Her jaw was tight, her eyes unwavering. They called her dangerous because she reminded the galaxy of something they'd tried to erase: human defiance. She was not just a soldier, she was the last flicker of Earth's pride. The sentence was public: death by incineration. The chamber lights dimmed. She turned to the watching council. 15 minutes, she said, voice steady. That's all it'll take. 15 minutes after I die, and you'll remember who we were. They laughed. The guards dragged her away. There was no appeal, no resistance, no fear. She died like she lived, on her feet, staring them down. The council declared peace had been preserved. The broadcast was transmitted to 50 systems. News anchors called it the final death knell of Earth's resistance. But elsewhere, on encrypted frequencies humans once used, silence fractured. A ping reached long-dormant satellites in deep voids where no light lived. A quantum lock disengaged. Caches opened. Protocols activated. Someone had triggered the final key, the death of the last Earth war hero. And buried instructions went live. A star station in unclaimed space received no response after sending a probe to a derelict human wreck. It vanished. Patrol ships went missing around the execution world. At first, it was dismissed. Static anomalies, pirate attacks. But then came the first symbol. Burned into the floor of a mining station, a blackened human skull over a double crescent. Not spray paint. Scorched at a molecular level. Below it, one phrase etched into the wall: she was one of ours. Inside the council's inner circle, tension crept in. The woman had been a symbol, but they believed she stood alone. That assumption cracked when a secure courier reported: classified Empire listening posts across the border had gone dark. In each, the last transmission was the same: a human whisper: "Boogeyman walks." The council dismissed it again. Myth. Pre-war ghost stories. Tactical hallucinations. There hadn't been a human threat in decades. Earth was abandoned. Uninhabitable. And those Black Ops squads? Disbanded. If they ever existed. But something had shifted. Officers in the Empire's border command began resigning or outright disappearing. One admiral shot himself after murmuring about a shadow stepping through his ship's sealed bulkhead. Survivors described attackers who left no trace, no sound, only precision kills and a single relic, an Earth military challenge coin placed on the chest of the commanding officer. On the back, engraved, "Torchbearer Protocol initiated." The woman they'd executed had once commanded the 13th Human Expeditionary Legion, Earth's last military line. After the fall of Earth, her unit vanished. The Empire assumed they died or scattered. In reality, they went dark, off-grid, operating under the last Earth directive: never strike unless the final line was broken. That line had a name. Her name. And now that she was gone, they weren't bound anymore. Whispers of a shadow unit called Boogeyman surfaced. A squad trained not to win battles, but to end wars through asymmetric annihilation. They never held planets. They erased threats. Their field manual was 4 words: no diplomacy. Just resolve. For decades, the Empire believed them extinct. But now, top-tier generals were dying in their own homes. Locked bunkers no longer safe. Guards slaughtered without firing a shot. Every corpse branded with human dog tags that didn't exist in any Imperial archive. Another name followed: Baba Yaga. Originally dismissed as Earth folklore, now it echoed through frightened comms. A woman with no known ID had been sighted walking alone through an Imperial labor camp on Architau Prime. No alarms triggered. All surveillance went dark. 37 prisoners escaped. Every guard was dead, bones shattered from within, neural implants fried. Carved into the commandant's desk. She lit the match. We burn the house. In less than 15 minutes after the woman's death, 7 worlds were in chaos. Not from fleets. Not from armies. From a surgical, cold response that made no demands, sent no warnings. The Empire began pulling forces back from outer systems. That only accelerated the bleed. As they contracted, they exposed themselves. Human operatives didn't follow territory lines. They followed names, locations, faces. One target at a time. Records emerged showing that the woman hero they executed had led humanitarian evacuations in border worlds decades earlier. Saved non-human colonies from extinction. Created an underground alliance of species who respected humans more than they admitted. The Empire had silenced her for fear she'd reignite rebellion. But her death did something worse. It confirmed what she'd always said: humans don't start wars. They finish them. A recovered terminal from a destroyed comms relay replayed her trial footage. Not the official broadcast, the unedited version. In it, the execution wasn't instant. She resisted. Broke a guard's arm. Looked the high adjudicator in the eye. "They're not coming because I'm important," she said. "They're coming because I mattered." She smiled. "And because you forgot what humans do when you take away our own." The terminal's playback ended with an unfamiliar voice saying only, "Coordinates locked. Begin sweep." An hour later, all comms from that sector went dark. The Empire tried to suppress it. They shut down civilian media, restricted hyperspace travel, and offered high rewards for any intel on surviving Earth extremists. But the very systems they used began turning against them. AI cores started glitching. Logistics ships rerouted into black zones. Fleet paths diverted with no explanation. Someone had embedded kill switches into their infrastructure. A buried program triggered by Earth's final death toll. She had been the key. The one they watched but underestimated. In life, she was a spark. In death, a signal. Her funeral wasn't held with ceremony. It wasn't even visible. But near the galactic core, on a dead world long forgotten, a figure stood over a shallow grave carved into obsidian rock. One human. No name. No markings. Just the same insignia burned into the old mining station, the skull and crescents. He knelt, placed a medal onto the stone, and walked away. From orbit, a beacon lit. An ancient frequency. One phrase repeated in old Earth military code: Ghost protocol active. Torchbearer confirmed Kia. Response unrestricted. The Empire still didn't grasp the scale. They thought they had destroyed the past. But they had awakened something older, quieter. Something bred not for diplomacy, not for occupation, but for vengeance measured in silence and steel. And it had already begun. A refueling station in the Caltraxis Reach went dark at 0300 standard. Surveillance logs ended mid-frame, no alarm, no alert. When a scout vessel arrived hours later, it found the station depressurized, every crew member dead, and the central command core melted from the inside. The walls bore no burn marks, no explosion. The only sign of entry was a single metal coin lodged in the captain's chest cavity, an Earth military coin last catalogued during the fall of Terra. Beneath it, etched into the console, Torchbearer. Empire officials dismissed it as an elaborate ploy, insurgent propaganda. But 27 minutes after the Caltraxis event, 3 more stations dropped off the grid. No trace. No survivors. One Empire command ship, the Virion, sent to investigate, disappeared in FTL. Its final log was a fragmented voice whispering "Boogeyman has arrived," before the data stream cut into black static. On a remote world in Sector 7F, the Empire's elite intelligence division convened in haste. The incidents formed a pattern, a hunt without a target, a message without a declaration. Records were pulled from classified Earth archives, long buried. Project Revenant. A Black Ops Ghost initiative designed for worst-case retaliation. The Empire had long assumed the humans had never finished it. They were wrong. The operatives didn't wear insignia. They didn't use broadcast channels. They never left the same trace twice. But one thing was constant: wherever the name Torchbearer had once been spoken, destruction followed. An orbital shipyard above Syraxis Prime lost 3 cruisers before they were launched. The Drydock's primary AI was overridden. Self-destruct codes were triggered. Survivors described a human shadow walking across the hull. No ships were detected leaving the area. As more footage was recovered, a profile began to form. Human. Female. Operative class. Silent. Efficient. Carried a curved blade of pre-Empire design and used tech beyond standard detection. This one was different from the Boogeyman unit. Deadlier, more surgical. Her presence was confirmed by the trail she left. Shredded control rooms, infiltrated data cores, and a medallion placed on each target's body. An old Earth symbol for death and rebirth. She didn't leave warnings. She didn't issue commands. She simply executed. Empire Fleet Command convened to escalate the matter. Hundreds of ships were reassigned to protect high-value asset. But the panic only fed the chaos. The more they guarded, the more they exposed. 2 warlords were assassinated in a matter of hours, both inside sealed bunkers guarded by elite drone contingent. The drones reported no breach. Logs were scrubbed clean. In one case, the warlord's body was found in his sleep chamber. No sign of trauma, yet every nerve cluster had been shut down manually. The words, "She lit the match," were etched onto the inside of the door using only fingernails. Council voices rose in confusion and fear. The attackers were not just military. They were myth. They were executing with precision the Empire had never witnessed before. Not even during the conquest of Earth had humans been this exacting. One senior commander, General Ocker, tried to counterstrike by deploying suppressor teams into 3 suspected human sectors. None returned. The final drone transmission was a grainy silhouette standing among bodies, then silence. The humans didn't destroy everything. That was what terrified them most. They left civilians untouched. They bypassed non-military structures. But every person responsible for the war hero's execution, every officer, every guard, every counselor who signed off, was being eliminated. Not tortured. Not interrogated. Just removed. A list was circulating through black channels. Names crossed off one by one. Meanwhile, the Boogeyman was spotted. Not confirmed, not captured, spotted. An entire Empire dreadnought went cold near the Jexon perimeter. Its crew was found orbiting the hull in sealed armor suits, frozen, air still in their lungs. Inside the ship, not a single bullet had been fired. But the bridge had a single human figure seated in the command chair, untouched. Unidentified. Unbothered. The ship was abandoned by the time a second crew arrived. The only data recovered was a time-stamped message. She mattered. Empire analysts realized too late what was happening. This was not a military campaign. It was a cleansing. It followed no doctrine, no central command structure. It moved through deep space relays, used tech that bypassed quantum locks, and operated with a logic no AI could map. These weren't soldiers. They were legends returning from the dark. Designed not to capture territory or win minds. They were retribution incarnate. One operative was briefly cornered on the moon of Galerun. Empire agents flooded the crater installation. They never made it inside. The door opened 6 hours later. Only the human operative remained. No blood. No visible wounds. Her face painted with a streak of black ash, a symbol only seen in ancient Earth funerary rites. She stared at the surveillance drone, held up a single piece of torn Empire cloth, and burned it in her hand. The footage cut to black. The Empire's top strategists convened again. They demanded retaliation. But there was no origin to strike. No fleet to target. Every attack came from nowhere. Every operative faded like ghosts. They operated off pre-collapse protocols. Their identities erased. Their allegiance unspoken. They didn't announce Earth's return. They punished the Empire for thinking Earth ever left. Security hardened around high command installations. Generals refused to sleep in the same location 2 nights in a row. Even planetary governors began to question their own defense measures. Civil unrest spread through fringe worlds. The question echoed, if Earth was destroyed, who are they? It wasn't just the killing. It was the timing, the precision, the silence. Baba Yaga's presence became synonymous with doom. Every world she stepped on lost all contact within hours. Her targets were always known collaborators, executioners, policy enforcers. She left no dead who didn't deserve it. But her face became myth. Some said she was the war hero reborn. Others claimed she had never left. An embodiment of vengeance. The woman who watched Earth fall and decided the galaxy would pay for every scream buried beneath its ashes. One intercepted log from a fleeing Empire senator begged for asylum in the neutral Zener systems. We didn't understand, he said. She wasn't a symbol. She was the lock. And when you killed her, the vault opened. We're not fighting an army. We're fighting ghosts made of O's. The Zener systems refused him entry. He was later found dead in an escape pod orbiting a dead star. No external damage. Internal organs ruptured by atmospheric compression. A calling card placed at his feet. One more debt paid. Boogeyman and Baba Yaga weren't working together. That was clear. They didn't share tactics. They didn't overlap. But the effect was coordinated, as if they followed an ancient rhythm. A death march set into motion decades ago. One that only needed a spark. The council chambers were on high alert, yet no alarms sounded when the power died. Every exit sealed. Every screen blacked out. The backup systems didn't fail. They were overridden. Then a single line of text appeared across the central console. The final name has been marked. No explanation. No context. Just silence. One counselor tried to send an emergency transmission, but the relay redirected to a live feed of the execution that had triggered it all. Unedited. Replayed without commentary. It wasn't a warning. It was the beginning of the end. Outside orbit, cloaked vessels formed a slow ring around the Central Empire sector. They didn't broadcast identification. They didn't answer hails. They moved like whispers in the void, silent, patient, deliberate. Long-forgotten ships, human-made but upgraded beyond anything previously recorded, drifted into strategic points across the sector. They bore no flags, no colors, only the old Earth crest, scarred and marked with blood. The first strike came in precise layers. Communications relays blinked out. Surveillance satellites vaporized mid-orbit. Automated defense turrets deactivated themselves, their cores corrupted by code older than the Empire's current systems. What followed wasn't a fleet engagement. It was extermination by precision. Every ship docked in the Empire's capital yards ceased function simultaneously. Plasma lines cut. Fuel drained. Hulls decompressed. There were no escape pods launched. No distress signals. Just stillness. The Council's emergency meeting fractured into chaos. Members demanded answers. Others screamed to surrender. But there was no one to surrender to. The humans hadn't issued terms. Hadn't sent representatives. They didn't want negotiation. They wanted to erase what killed her. And they were doing it with mathematical coldness. The first capital world fell without a shot fired. Its command centers were overridden. Its skies darkened as orbital stations descended in flames. Civilians were untouched. Infrastructure remained. But every military official, every council loyalist, every tribunal judge associated with her death vanished. Some were found impaled on the same pyres she had once stood before. Others simply dissolved, vaporized at the molecular level, their remains encoded with a repeating message. Debt collected. 3 more worlds followed, each fall more surgical than the last. Entire governments collapsed under the weight of phantom strike. Security AI began deactivating themselves rather than face the incoming code signatures. The Empire's greatest war machine, a juggernaut dreadnought stationed above Volnari Prime, self-destructed 5 minutes after detecting a single human operative aboard. No entry logs. No alarms. Just one word left behind, scorched into the control panel: torchbearer. The operatives didn't speak. They left behind no demands. They weren't seeking justice. This was judgment, executed by those who'd trained in silence for decades. Human revenge wasn't loud. It was disciplined, generational, a consequence forged in grief and precision. On the outer rim, an Empire outpost intercepted a transmission. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't even targeted. It simply repeated one line over an open channel: "The cost of her life is exacted in full." The message had no coordinates, no identity, but every listening post that captured it was wiped out within 24 hours. Resistance collapsed internally. Officers abandoned their posts. Some tried to flee into uncharted systems, but they found their ships rerouted. Human code was embedded in ancient galactic infrastructure. It had been waiting. They had seeded the systems long ago with failsafes no one had detected, algorithms tied to her DNA, her call sign, her last breath. The moment she died, the entire board flipped. In the ruins of the first tribunal chamber, a figure appeared, unseen by cameras, unnoticed by security. The very same hall where she had been sentenced was now buried in ash. In the center, a human kneels. Not a speech. Not a ceremony. Just a small light igniting at her feet. A symbol projected across the scorched floor. The torchbearer insignia, now split in half, glowing red. The light fades. No one sees it. But the message carries through the dark. An Empire archivist, buried in a sublevel research vault, finally uncovers the full design of Project Revenant. Its final clause was simple: in event of systemic human extinction or unjustified execution of Earth's final protector, Retribution Authority is transferred to autonomous command. No council. No override. No survivors. The Empire tried one final act, launching a last reserve fleet from their deep core stronghold. It never exited the system. Human stealth mines, disguised as asteroid fields, shredded every vessel mid-jump. Wreckage formed a debris ring visible from space, spelling out a phrase in ancient Terran dialect: "You were warned." In quiet corners of the galaxy, civilians whispered her name. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. The woman they killed had become something more than a symbol. She had become the ignition point of a legend long buried. One not fueled by vengeance, but by resolve. A reminder to the stars that humans don't forget. They don't forgive. They remember. And they return. A final communique reached what was left of the council. It wasn't signed. It wasn't even addressed. It simply played one final moment from her trial, unedited. The moment she stared down the tribunal and said, 15 minutes. The feed ended there. Then static. Then nothing. The Galactic Empire didn't fall in a grand battle. It didn't collapse from rebellion. It vanished under the scalpel of forgotten wrath. There were no ruins left to mourn. No bodies to recover. Only empty systems where power once reigned and a single echo that haunted every dead frequency. She was ours. And in the silent stretch of space where Earth once was, a signal beacon pulsed once more, for the first time in a century. Not a call for aid. Not a signal of war. Just a single encoded phrase broadcasting on an endless loop to the stars: "We finish what you start." Because when the galaxy took one of their own, humanity didn't come for justice. They came to end the story.